Transforming the Self from Within. The third episode of Twin Peaks, technically titled Episode 2 since the pilot episode is Episode 0, is called Zen, or The Skill to Catch a Killer, and it aired on April 19th, 1990. Written by Mark Frost and David Lynch, and directed by David Lynch, this episode presents the most wildly imaginative view of Twin Peaks yet, and brings us to places both wonderful and strange, as it challenges us to come face to face with temptation, seduction, addiction, and lust, and poses the question, can real transformation come from within one's self? And does Zen truly exist? The sudden arrival of a new member of the Horne family disrupts the zen of a peaceful family dinner, tempting Ben to one-eyed Jacks for a taste of Earth's more carnal pleasures. Cooper continues the investigation into Laura's death with an unusual investigative technique he learned from a meditative dream. Donna and James explore the mysteries of love and desire. Ed and Nadene stumble into grease-soaked silent drapes. We receive an invitation to love as Bobby and Shelly speak to each other as if in their own soap opera. Special Agent Albert Rosenfield arrives in Twin Peaks, carrying a book on Tibet but lacking certain social niceties. Audrey dreamily dances in the double R. Leland and Sarah dance and scream in the absence of Zen. Mike and Bob manifest themselves, and as the town of Twin Peaks collectively sleeps after another day of lament and sadness, Special Agent Dale Cooper finds himself transforming from within in another place, perhaps his own dream, or a deep state of meditation, or perhaps Pan's own labyrinth of merriment, a place where the birds sing a pretty song, and there is always music in the air. Welcome to Falling, Floating, Dreaming, the magic of Twin Peaks. This is a new Twin Peaks project that hopes to explore the beloved world of Twin Peaks, both seasons of the original show, the film Fire Walk with Me, and The Return, plus all the missing pieces and officially released materials through the lens of the tarot. The premise of this project is not to attempt to solve the mystery of Twin Peaks or attempt to figure out what Frost and Lynch were trying to do or say with their art. Instead, just like the tarot, this project attempts to use Twin Peaks as an outer mirror for our internal and external processes and aligns with the basic functions of mythology, or the essential services that mythology provides for human growth and development as a resource for self-revelation and self-reclamation processes. That quote comes from Angelis Arian in the book The Tarot Handbook, Practical Applications of Ancient Visual Symbols, and it perfectly sums up what this podcast project is all about. The secrets of Twin Peaks are found within you, in your own mind, body, spirit, and heart. Lynch and Frost have given us beautifully rich, complex, deep, and dark stories, a mirror to stare into, and use to discover those inner processes by looking at a reflection of the world and ourselves in order to come to our own conclusions about what it all means. My name is Justin Carey, and I invite you along for this joyride, my magic friends, to discover the secrets of Twin Peaks, dive into the mysteries of the tarot, and enjoy this strange dream with me for just a little while. Welcome to Falling, Floating, Dreaming, the magic of Twin Peaks. On this episode of Falling, Floating, Dreaming, we are talking about episode 2 of Twin Peaks Season 1, Zen, or the skill to catch a killer. Perhaps the most crucial episode of the first season of Twin Peaks aside from the pilot. Directed by David Lynch and written by Mark Frost and David Lynch, this episode contains not only the seminal, symbolic imagery and themes deeply connected to the mysteries and lore of the show, it also reveals for the first time the deeper undercurrent of what Twin Peaks really is. Like the tarot, Lynch uses this episode to slightly pull back the curtain and reveal there is more at work here than simply a journey of a detective investigating a small-town crime. And it is here, in episode 2, that some of the deeper, more spiritual mysteries of the show begin to peek from behind the red curtain that has been occulting them all along. We just have to be careful, as the 15th card in the major arcana, the devil, warns us who to trust as we revel in the merriment that this viewing brings. This week, we are confronted with Pan himself. Let's rock!
Sometimes ideas, like men, jump up and say, hello? They introduce themselves, these ideas, with words. Are they words? These ideas speak so strangely. All that we see in this world is based on someone's ideas. Some ideas are destructive, some are constructive. Some ideas can arrive in the form of a dream. I can say it again. Some ideas arrive in the form of a dream.
In the Margaret Lanterman Log Lady intro for episode 2, Lynch invokes the idea of the dream, perhaps the most quintessential concept enveloping the entire Twin Peaks project. Lynch and Frost will return to this elemental question 25 years later in Twin Peaks: The Return and leave us to ponder an even deeper mystery, one rooted in the Buddhist philosophies of the show first introduced directly in this episode. We live inside a dream, but who is the dreamer? Alas, we are not quite ready for that mystery just yet. For now, we are content to ponder the notion of where ideas come from. And here, the Log Lady tells us not once but twice that some ideas arrive in the form of a dream. It is important to note here, she says, in the form of a dream, and make the distinction between an idea arriving in a dream and an idea arriving in the form of a dream. What does this mean? What is the form of a dream? Here, it will be important to remember that David Lynch grew up studying art. He is a practitioner of what he calls the art life. He has built his entire living persona around a living, breathing aesthetic that feeds his artistic need to create. We see this creative drive expressed in the Devil Tarot card, in the mixing of the male and female energies depicted on the card itself, in the various depictions of procreation and sexuality associated with the devil and creation, in the paintings of Lynch's favorite artist, Francis Bacon, and in so much of the capital art life, the desire to live a creative, expressive, and satisfied life. And so form becomes so important to the artist. Not just the idea, but the form of the idea, the shape of it, the feel of it, the sound of it, the way it looks and tastes, and the vibe. The stuff you can't really describe, the art of it. Perhaps it is this quality that gives Twin Peaks such a unique aura, this form, this indescribable feeling of a dream. It is not an idea, it is the form of an idea, abstracted through the mind of an artist and set forth before an audience. Lynch does not care that you understand the message. He only cares that you understand the form, much like a dream. And so, with the Log Lady's enigmatic opening message, we are ushered into episode 2, the realm of the devil, temptation, bedevilment, lust, manipulation, and what's more, some new ideas jump up and introduce themselves in some very new and interesting forms. The Devil is the only card in the entire deck which has undergone a transformation within itself. During Greek mythology, this symbol was Pan, half man and half goat, the gold of merriment and sensuality. In Egyptian mythology, this symbol was Ra, the sun deity, a symbol of life force and energy. During the Middle Ages, there was a backlash to the panistic cults, and the archetype of the devil was created. The panistic goat was changed into the devil, and ironically, devil spelled backwards is L-I-V-E-D, lived. This quote comes from the Tarot Handbook, Practical Applications of Ancient Visual Symbols by Angelus Arian. In this history, we see the devil not as the fallen angel Lucifer, foil to God, lord of the underworld Satan that was popularized in modern Christian belief, but instead as Pan, the Greek mythological figure of merrymaking and mischief, a bedeviler, not the devil. The image and tarot card in reference here is from the Thoth deck and depicts this half-man, half-goat image of the devil, which can also be seen in the Rider-Waite image. The Rider-Waite deck image depicts a single nude male figure and a single nude female figure, each bound with chains to a black door or box upon which the devil sits. The single male-female dichotomy is replaced on the Thoth card with multiple figures. Quote, the 4 female figures and the 4 male figures at the base of the card also represent an inherent need during times of bedevilment to use both our magnetic receptive abilities portrayed by the female figures, as well as our dynamic initiatory abilities represented by the male figures. Creative power is the ability to combine both the genetic balances of magnetism and dynamism within our natures. End quote. This quote comes from the Tarot Handbook, and we see this depiction from the Thoth deck displayed in tableau in episode 2 when Ben and Jerry Horne visit One-Eyed Jacks, although the display there is out of balance, with only women on either side of Blackie, the bedeviler who runs this particular carnal house of pleasure. One key consideration when dealing with the Devil Tarot card. This card, like all the rest of the tarot, is a mirror, and the devil is an internal contender, not an external force to be reckoned with. And so, the true devil to be wary of in episode 2 is not the menacing Leo Johnson terrifying young Bobby and Mike in the woods, although he poses a real and present danger, the threat of physical violence, drug addiction, and so many other tangible fears. The true devil comes from within and our own positive and negative experiences. Often, the devil appears just like Pan, as someone merry, happy even, perhaps someone dancing or singing, someone who you would very much like to spend time with, someone who you feel you can trust and who you want to get to know, someone who tells you things you want to hear and attempts to undo your much sought-after balance with temptations of overindulgence, seduction, addiction, or materialistic pursuits. And often, that person is you, trapped by your own darkest desires. I have good news. That chewing gum you like is coming back in style. One last point about the Devil Tarot mythology. A quote again from the Tarot Handbook. Quote, Saturn, the double-ringed planet, rules the sign of Capricorn, the goat. The rings of Saturn are seen at the top of the card. Saturn is the planet most associated with balance, discipline, and doing things step by step. Capricorn is the astrological sign of the goat, known for tenacity, productivity, and achievement. It is in our capacity to follow our bliss, or what has resonance for us, that we can execute the discipline to bring into form our creative visions with mirth and tangible results. Let us remember the image of the planet Saturn at the end of episode 2, Zen, or the skill to catch a killer, as we think about Pan, merry bedeviler, and how we might find strength in following bliss to bring creative visions into form.
I've got good news. That the mule is going to come back in style.
Before we can proceed with Twin Peaks Episode 2, Zen, or the skill to catch a killer, and make some of the important connections between the themes of the Devil Tarot card and the complex ideas being put forth on this show by Frost and Lynch, We have to meander down a short side path here, or maybe it's the main road, and talk a little about the history of meditation. I'd like to read an excerpt from an article called The Story of Transcendental Meditation from the website Inverse, written by Castilia Medrano, published in June of 2016. TM is a closed-off community that promises immediate results if you're willing to pay for them. In 1968, the Beatles went to India. They met with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi at his ashram, where they received training in transcendental meditation. They brought their families and their assistants. Then they went back to the Western world and gave interview after interview about their experiences and how transformative it was. They wrote more than 20 songs during their time in Rishikesh, and some of them, notably Mother Nature's Son, became advertisements for TM. People were curious about the reservoir of creativity Paul, John, George, and Ringo seemed to have tapped. TM has been popular with the Hollywood crowd ever since, but in the last decade, it has gone absolutely gangbusters. A-list celebrities and Wall Street one-percenters cite TM as the secret to their success without risking any professional standing. The David Lynch Foundation, which has become a de facto symbol of the method as well as a resource for practitioners, has evangelized to hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. TM now claims more than 6 million practitioners. Bill Clinton practices TM. Rupert Murdoch practices TM. Oprah, Ellen, and of course Dr. Oz practice TM. Is this part of a broader cultural trend toward mindfulness? Perhaps, but no other technique or practice is having a moment like TM. One of the reasons TM is thriving is that its proponents excel at presenting scientific evidence of its efficacy. There are hundreds of studies, testimonials, and peer-reviewed papers purporting that TM can do anything from extending your lifespan to lowering your blood pressure to curing your anxiety to treating your depression to soothing your chronic pain and insomnia and overcoming your eating disorder. To accomplish these goals, TM teaches you need a word or a sound that serves as a stepping stone to transcendence, a personal mantra. You don't pick it, said Dr. David Vago, an instructor and associate psychologist in the Functional Neuroimaging Laboratory at Harvard Medical School. You have to pay for it. There's a lot of politics and secrecy. TM remains fascinating as a movement, but it's successful as a product. TM, trademark. So TM. That transaction at the core of TM is what makes its ascendance in Western culture both significantly more and significantly less complicated. Fundamentally, TM works like any exercise fad. For a fee, practitioners are assigned a mantra designed to produce a specific result. And TM seems to succeed in large part because it is easy and because it does in fact provide real results, but not necessarily in the incontrovertible or peerless way many in the TM community would have you believe. TM exercises the frontal lobe, and for very specific reasons, busy professionals want or need that workout. TM remains fascinating as a movement, but it is currently successful as a product. TM. And so that's the end of the Inverse article there. A little bit of history of transcendental meditation and its business practice. In episode 2 of Twin Peaks, Dale Cooper says, following a dream I had 3 years ago, I have become deeply moved by the plight of the Tibetan people and have been filled with a desire to help them. I also awoke from the same dream realizing that I had subconsciously gained knowledge of a deductive technique involving mind-body coordination operating hand in hand with the deepest level of intuition. Zen, transcendental meditation, Buddhism, Tibetan spiritual philosophy connected with South Asian spiritual philosophy, all of these motifs come into play here in episode 2 of Twin Peaks, and it is essential to note they come to Special Agent Dale Cooper in the form of a dream. As the log lady tells us in the intro to episode 2, some ideas, like men, jump up and say hello. They introduce themselves, these ideas, with words. Are they words? These ideas speak so strangely. All that we see in this world is based on someone's ideas. Some ideas are destructive. Some are constructive. Some ideas can arrive in the form of a dream. I can say it again. Some ideas arrive in the form of a dream. When we dream, we meditate. Our conscious mind lets go, and our unconscious mind opens itself up to energy, ideas, feelings, emotions, and a flood of new things we could not otherwise experience while conscious thought gets in the way. As the log lady reminds us, some ideas are destructive and others are constructive. The warning present in the Devil Tarot card as well, and a reminder that these ideas are not external. They come from inside ourselves. The tempter, the seducer, the manipulator. These forces are internal ones. Little men jumping up to say hello. Look at me, listen to me, do what I say. Grabbing our attention with the clap of a hand or an unusual dance. Goading us to chain ourselves to ideas that could harm. This next passage comes from the website Lion's Roar and is a portion of a larger article by Annabella Pitkin titled Forgotten Encounters of Tibetan Zen. And Annabella writes, the phrase Tibetan Zen, the title of scholar Sam Van Schaak's new book, may initially startle the casual reader. The idea of Zen in Tibet is clearly announcing some news about Tibetan Buddhism that most readers have not heard before. This book, a collection of short translations with introductory essays, is based on Van Schaak's extensive study of rare 9th and 10th century Tibetan manuscripts from the famous Central Asian Buddhist cave shrines at Duanghang, an ancient oasis town along what is now often referred to as the Silk Road. These early Tibetan Duanghang manuscripts, forgotten for over 1,000 years and only rediscovered in the early 12th century, offer a window into the existence of a Tibetan, quote, Zen tradition that has been virtually unknown to scholars, whether Tibetan, European, or Chinese. Van Schaak explains at the outset that he has made a strategic choice to use the Japanese term Zen for what he calls a, quote, family of traditions in Chinese, Tibetan, Japanese, Korean, and other languages. Chan in Chinese, San in Korean, and Zen in Japanese. All these terms are pronunciations of the Sanskrit term dhyana, or meditation. Tibetans, for their part, use the term samten, which in a translation of the Sanskrit word for meditation, rather than a transliteration. Chan, Zen, San, Samten are linked not only by terminology, but also by some, though not all, aspects of practice, as well as by their overlapping accounts of lineage, genealogy, and transregional transmission. Nevertheless, these traditions each evolved in distinctive, though often mutually recognizable ways. Interestingly, Tibetan Zen covers practices, texts, and ideas that are in some cases dramatically unlike what we often associate with either Zen or Tibet. The most surprising of these are combinations of Zen and Tantra. Both Tibetan and Chinese Chan Buddhist teachers at Duanghang show up in the manuscripts teaching in a range of methods explicitly linking Zen meditation to Tantric sadhana practice. For instance, the Zen meditation techniques known as observing the mind, techniques that were very popular at Duanghang, were apparently used as a part of Tantric practice. In a related vein, some of the text Van Schaak translates here suggests that, quote, the ordination platform used in Zen rituals could be regarded as a physical representation of the Tantric mandala. Perhaps not coincidentally, Van Schaak points to frequent exhortations to secrecy for Zen found in these materials. We may not think of Zen as a set of secret instructions, but in the Duanghang lineages, Zen teachings, like Tantric practices, could be considered special and esoteric. And that is the end of that quote from Lion's Roar. And so even here, Lynch surprises audiences with duality and doubleness, a devilish play of using the word Zen in the title of episode 2, a Japanese term, and then having his characters draw so heavily from Buddhist meditative philosophy in their practice. This is not a mistake or coincidence. It is a subtle nod to the layers upon layers of ideas present in Twin Peaks and how, like the tarot, like the show itself, and like the human heart, mind, body, and soul, the journey of being and of self-knowledge is one of complex balance, mirroring inward reflection and outward experience, and the difficulty in the mapping of the dark and shadowy unknown spaces.
Night, Ed!
Zen, or the skill to catch a killer, begins with a scene of peaceful Zen-like calm as the Horne family enjoys an idyllic family dinner. A roaring fire blazes in the background as Sylvia, Audrey, Ben, and Johnny, quietly and without speaking to one another, eat their peas, mashed potatoes, and meat, the traditional American family spread. Sylvia refills her martini glass and looks to Ben for comfort and connection, but finds none across the massive mahogany table, while Audrey and Johnny smile at each other. The scene lingers for a moment, a common trope of David Lynch, to allow the audience to savor the sounds and the feeling of this false family harmony, this space pretending to be a family unified by love and warmth. Suddenly, a new temptation arrives. The first devilish figure of episode 2, Ben Horne's brother Jerry, arrives home from Paris and bursts into the family dining hall. Unannounced, no knock, no doorbell. Jerry greets Audrey and Sylvia, who wants nothing to do with him, and ignores Johnny. He calls Paris a nightmare and then proceeds to offer Ben baguettes he brought home from Paris. In the opening moments of episode 2, we are greeted with a scene of merriment, indulgence, and a giving in to those tempestuous sides of ourself. Ben Horne devours this morsel, inhaling and moaning as if making love to the food he is eating, completely gorging himself on this butter and brie baguette in a clear demonstration of a total abandonment of the self, acquiescing to the base instinct of desire. Ben even makes a comment, mouth stuffed with butter and brie. You know why we like this? It reminds us of Ginny and Jenny's Down by the River. Perhaps an allusion to a sexual encounter the brothers had as young boys one summer, linking the pleasures of eating with the pleasures of sex. This scene all taking place at the Horne family dinner table in front of Sylvia, Audrey, and Johnny. Another scene of the American family home and the reality of what is actually going on beneath it in Twin Peaks when corruption is allowed to take hold. At this same hour of the evening, James and Donna Hayward are also in the throes of another kind of temptation, although theirs is seemingly of a purer kind. Having finished dinner at the Hayward home in episode 1, James and Donna find themselves alone on the sofa in the family living room as Doc Hayward and Eileen Hayward have gone to bed. Teenagers tiptoeing through love, and yet chained to the carnal desires of the flesh, like the man and the woman on the Rider-Waite devil card, as the Horne brothers have become. From here, the brothers Horne travel to One-Eyed Jack's, a brothel and gambling house across the Canadian border from Twin Peaks, run by Blackie. Jerry was the first tempter of the episode. Blackie is the second. In an echoed tableau of the Thoth Devil Tarot card, Blackie appears before the Horne brothers as the devil figure herself, dressed all in black. On her left, a row of young women in playing card-themed lingerie with actual cards attached to the strappy parts. On her right, another row of young women dressed just the same, mirroring the men and women from the Thoth Devil card, yet unbalanced here, only women, and presented like tempting carnal pleasures for the Horne brothers' bemusement. Ben and Jerry are here because there is a new girl, and they flip a coin to see who will sleep with her first. Ben wins the toss to Jerry's dismay, and Ben disappears behind a red curtain with a nervous and clearly unexcited young lady. Around midnight, James and Donna talk and realize Lara was preventing their love from blooming. They kiss and wonder if they are going to be together. Agent Cooper returns to room 315 at the Great Northern Hotel, scans his surroundings, and happily toot-toots his newly whittled whistle with a grin. Cooper thus far has seemed immune from any sort of devilish interference. The flirtatious advances of Audrey Horne, the aggressive interrogation of Bobby Briggs. Aside from a slight overindulgence of cherry pie at the Double R, Cooper seems unfazed and balanced, eager, steadfast, and tempered, and he stands here at midnight, smile on his face, suit and hair perfect, and tooting his whistle to prove. By the end of this episode, that foundation will be shaken. Maybe. He receives a late-night phone call from Agent Hawk regarding Ronette Pulaski. Hawk says her body and spirit are still far apart. A haunting phrase that will be a harbinger for Cooper, himself 25 years later. Hawk also mentions the perfume counter at Horne's department store and a one-armed man at the hospital. Cooper seems very interested in this one-armed man. A knock at the door of Cooper's room reveals no one there, except a note slid under the door and the phrase "Jack with one eye" written on white paper. Past midnight, and Mike and Bobby take a perilous trek into the woods of Twin Peaks to find the drug stash drop point where they do business with Leo Johnson. A nightmarish scene follows. A cackling Leo Johnson appears, an extra electrical buzz sound accompanying his flashlight turning on to cue the audience to his malicious intent, threatening to kill Bobby and Mike if they don't pay up. But Laura had the other half of the money. A strange man in a ski mask appearing from behind a tree, a mystery man? Leo demanding the money and saying, Leo needs a new pair of shoes, perhaps a new soul. Perhaps Leo sold his to the devil long ago. And Leo sends Mike and Bobby scrambling back to their car, terrified. The drugs here are the devil image, the dangers of what can happen if addiction becomes too strong a force in your life, if the balance becomes too far tipped and the addictive thing becomes what rules. The violence of someone like Leo Johnson comes calling. The next morning, Nadene is working out on a rowing machine in her living room and has set her new silent drape runner designs on the floor, conspicuously directly in the path leading from the front door to the hallway. Big Ed stumbles in, absolutely covered in thick black grease from his gas farm, and he trips on the drape runners, destroying one of them and spilling grease on the other. Nadene is furious. Ed, you make me sick! Ed apologizes, but Nadine's rage is unquelled, and she actually bends the metal bar of the rowing machine in half with her fury. The devil card depicts two human figures, one male and one female, chained to a black box upon which sits the half-man, half-goat devil figure. Ed and Nadene are these two figures, chained together in this unhappy marriage for deeply personal reasons, both feeling they cannot let go of the other, and yet both feeling they do not want what they have. Ed is looking for kindness and compassion and love and happiness. Nadene wants silence and fulfillment and a sense of purpose. They are both chained to empty desire. The scene that follows is one of the most classic in all of Twin Peaks, as Special Agent Dale Cooper uses a unique, intuitive, investigative technique known only to him to deduce which J-named suspects they should pursue in the Palmer case. Recall that Laura mentioned she would be seeing J tonight in her diary, and so Cooper has listed all the suspects with J names on a chalkboard positioned in the woods, presumably somewhere behind the sheriff's station. Lucy, Andy, Truman, and Hawk gather with coffee and donuts to help Cooper conduct his work. Meanwhile, Shelly Johnson is home, recovering from the traumatic and awful assault of Leo the night before. For the first time on Twin Peaks, we see the show within the show, Invitation to Love, on the television in her house, a clear mockery of her situation, which Shelly herself comments on. The narrator of the show says, "Invitation to love. Each day brings a new beginning, and every hour holds the promise of an invitation to love." As Twin Peaks itself is a metaphor for television and often helps us understand what television is and the role it plays in society, Invitation to Love becomes an internal force within Twin Peaks, a voice from inside, offering a mirror of the show itself to help the characters understand the journey they are on and the struggles they are dealing with. Just the same with the tarot. Bobby arrives at the door and comforts Shelly, exchanging words much like two soap opera characters might. If Leo ever does this again, I'll kill him. He'll kill us both. We cut to the Double R, the goodness center of Twin Peaks, where the coffee is always hot and the pie is always homemade and fresh. Lynch presents such an interesting camera shot here with Norma in the foreground and Big Ed in the background, the focus on Ed, Norma blurred in the foreground. Big Ed pauses for a moment and waves in a very Cooper-esque, or perhaps it's the other way around, gesture and smiles at Norma, just a genuine, joy-filled, happy-to-see-you moment and says, "Cup of coffee." Norma and Ed represent characters in balance. They have not given into their temptations in the same way as, say, the Horne brothers have, and allowed those devilish indulgences to take over their lives. Norma and Ed live in humble existences, happy to simply see one another, knowing they cannot be together, but at least they can sit down at the counter of the Double R, enjoy a cup of coffee together once in a while, and listen to each other share stories of the day. Meanwhile, Cooper's investigation continues. In one interesting moment, Lucy refills the detective's coffee cups, and Cooper initially spits out the sacred drink, an action he will repeat 25 years later in The Return, but here he immediately says, "Damn fine coffee," to assure everyone the coffee is still good, the mojo is still working, the coffee's just hot. A cautionary sign to not rush in to indulge in a good thing, ere you might get burned. Cooper explains how this technique came to be. He extends his silver pointer, wise master to attentive pupils, and all four sit forward in syncopated movement. Cooper tells them, "Following a dream I had 3 years ago, I have become deeply moved by the plight of the Tibetan people and have been filled with a desire to help them. I also awoke from the same dream realizing I had subconsciously gained knowledge of a deductive technique involving mind-body coordination operating hand-in-hand with the deepest level of intuition." We hear echoes of the High Priestess from the last episode of this podcast, as well as the tarot card that Cooper most often embodies, the Magician, which we will get to in a future episode. Rocks are warmed in a metal bucket, calling forth the fire. As Cooper throws each stone toward a glass bottle, Truman calls out the name of each person whose name has a J in it and their connection to Laura Palmer. Cooper explains that if a rock breaks the bottle, that is the person they should pursue. Director Lynch uses this setup to remind the viewers, 3 episodes in, who all these characters he and Frost have introduced us to are, and give us a list of the possible suspects. Each one gets a short jump cut as Cooper throws the rock. 2 are of special interest: Dr. Lawrence Jacoby, Laura's psychiatrist, and Leo Johnson, whose name results in a broken bottle. Echoes of the Log Lady intro for this episode. At one point during this display, Truman pulls Cooper aside and asks, "Did the idea for this really come to you in a dream?" Cooper smiles and responds simply with an impassioned yes. All the assurance Truman needs, as the bond between these two connected souls has already deepened to a point of great trust and admiration. That afternoon, the Hayward family sits together at the Double R Diner after church and watch as Audrey Horne saunters in, drops a dime in the jukebox, and sits down at the counter for a cup of coffee. Donna strikes up a conversation and tells Audrey she sort of loved Laura for taking care of her brother Johnny, but there are things that Audrey really didn't like about Laura. They laugh when Audrey says, "Agent Cooper loves coffee," revealing the schoolgirl crush Audrey has on Cooper as Audrey's finger makes circles around the coffee cup. Audrey asks Donna if Laura ever asked about her father, and Donna is confused by the question. Audrey says, "He used to sing to her." Distracted by the music, isn't it too dreamy? Audrey leaves Donna at the counter and enacts another classic scene, now dubbed Audrey's Dance, as is the title of the musical track playing in the background, a piece by Angelo Badalamenti, and dances in a very dreamlike, rhythmic, and seductive way, right in the middle of the Double R, to her own music. There is always music in the air here in Twin Peaks for Audrey, it seems. Audrey often wears the mask of innocent schoolgirl, but plays the part of Pan, the bedeviling temptress looking to make mischief, especially when it comes to her father. The scene fades to black. The arrival of Albert Rosenfield to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Station can only be described as what it must have felt like to have a fish ruin a perfectly good percolated pot of coffee. As Cooper and Truman examine a newly found bloody rag, Lucy informs them Albert has arrived. Cooper intuits this news before Lucy even reveals the information, and Truman is once again stunned by how good Cooper is. Cooper places his hand on Truman's shoulder and warns him Albert lacks some of the social niceties. Truman responds, well, nobody's perfect. And then in what feels like an ad-libbed moment, Cooper pinches Truman's nose and makes a quacking sound. Both men laugh, some levity in the face of dire times. Albert arrives carrying insults and a book about Tibet, which he hands to Lucy and she begins to read. Nothing nice, pleasant, or constructive comes out of Albert's mouth. He is all business and all insults all the time. Truman can barely stomach it, and Cooper just smiles the whole way through, immune or numb to Albert's crass ways. Truman immediately lambastes him. Albert shrugs it off, and Cooper gives a classic Cooper thumbs up in a beautifully framed triangle of these three men, representing three very different aspects of the psyche in dialogue. Big Ed returns home to find Nadene rapturous with joy. The grease he spilled earlier was a breakthrough. It made her drape runners absolutely silent, and now she loves him, nearly bowls him over with joy. Pete and Catherine Martell bicker and fight, throwing insults at each other, while Pete secretly slips Josie the key to the illicit second ledger Catherine has been keeping. Scenes of relationships fraught with distrust, unease, souls trapped by dark desires. Night falls at the Palmer house, and Leland is haunted, tormented by his daughter's death. A painting of a horned stag hangs on the wall. Leland snaps 3 times above the record player, as if unsure what he is trying to do, standing above it. The 4th snap brings his attention back into focus, and he sets the needle. Swing music begins playing, which seems to ease his tortured soul. His expression quivers and contorts as his gaze finds the framed portrait of Laura. The phone rings. He picks up Laura's picture instead and starts spinning around with it, sobbing and moaning. Lynch's camera mimics the movement as his screams rise into animalistic groans. "We have to dance! We have to dance for Laura!" Leland feels compelled to dance, to make merry, to live, perhaps called by the pan-goat devil figure of Greek myth here to honor his daughter through merrymaking, or perhaps the need to dance is compelled from some other more sinister place, from another devil figure dressed in red who snaps and claps his hands. Sarah rushes into the room and tries to stop him, but the picture frame breaks and shatters to the floor, something Sarah will be doomed to repeat 25 years later on a seemingly loop of misery, and Leland's hand becomes cut and bloody. The swing music crescendos. Sarah screams, "What is going on in this house?" Leland, what is going on in this house? Perhaps the core question of the entire show. Leland sobs over the broken picture of his daughter. As Dale Cooper falls asleep this night in room 315 of the Great Northern Hotel, David Lynch and Twin Peaks takes us to another place. A place that will change television and popular culture forever. A place that will influence countless shows for years to come and set the tone for Twin Peaks and the cultural zeitgeist of American imagination forever. It will take us to a place that is born from the mind of a true artist, the form of an idea, and like the tarot, not intended to be analyzed down into its component parts and understood at an atomic level. Instead, also like the tarot, the place where Agent Cooper's unconscious, sleeping mind goes tonight can be a mirror for him, for us, those interested in exploring the deeper complexities of what it means to be a human being and what art is for, to make us feel. It is also in this place that we meet the devil of this episode. So, continue with me now on this strange dream just a little while longer as we enter into, for the first time on Twin Peaks, the Red Room. Special Agent Dale Cooper sits in profile, looking to the right. He has aged, his skin wrinkled. He still wears the same FBI suit, but the tie is different, and he has more pins on his lapel. One seems to be of a rising fire. The lounge chair he sits in rises to his collar, and behind him, billowing red curtains rise out of the frame like the licking tongues of a billowing inferno. Cooper's attention is drawn by the deep, throaty sound of Sarah Palmer yelling Laura, a sound that will echo back again 25 years later in the closing seconds of the return. And Cooper notices, twitching in the corner of the room with his back toward Cooper, a short man in an all-red suit, the crown of his head just below a spotlight illuminating the red curtain behind him. Electricity surges, cackling sounds, and we see images jumping through Cooper's subconscious. Sarah running down the stairs, the ceiling fan in the Palmer house, Bob gazing up from the bars of Laura's bed frame. Then, the one-armed man speaks. This is actually footage that was shot and aired for the international version of the pilot episode of Twin Peaks, but finds its way into this episode. Mike, the one-armed man, recites a poem with direct references to the tarot. He says, "Through the darkness of future pasts, the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me." Future pasts, as in pasts that have yet to occur, perhaps meaning the present moment. The magician, the first card in the major arcana. Fire, a major symbol in the tarot. Two worlds, a common theme in the tarot and Twin Peaks. Duality, subconscious, conscious, dream, awake, spirit world, physical world. The chant, or the mantra, or the meditation, or the song my father would sing to her, or there is always music in the air, or Cooper tooting his whistle, all while the man in the red suit twitches in the corner, ready to tempt the unbalanced heart. Mike then says, "I too have been touched by the devilish one." More temptation and seduction and unbalancing by the 15th tarot card. He continues to reveal that he removed his own arm after seeing the face of God and realized he needed to free himself from the chains that bound him to his desires. He then connects us to Bob, the malevolent man we saw leering up from Laura's bed frame, who now seems to be lurking in a basement boiler room, and we hear a distinct humming sound, which is very reminiscent of the 432 megahertz singing bowl sound of a meditation bowl chime being struck. Bob speaks of killing and death bags. In reality, Cooper tosses and turns in his sleep. We return to the red room. The man from another place rustles and twitches in the corner. Cooper looks away, and we now realize Laura Palmer is also sitting in this lobby of sorts, alive and well. As soon as Cooper realizes Laura, or at least someone who looks exactly like her, is here also, the man from another place spins around, claps his hands, and says, "Let's rock." A distinguishing feature of this space is that its denizens move and speak in reverse. Sort of. What is actually happening to give this place its distinct vibe is the actors are performing their lines phonetically backwards. So the first line here is spoken out loud as "Carstel," which is the phrase "Let's rock" spoken backwards. And then that audio track is played in reverse on the track. When done this way, it sounds like the actor is saying "Let's rock" in a strange, otherworldly way. Additionally, the actors do their movements backwards, and the scene is played in reverse to give the movements a strange, out-of-pace feeling. I mention all of this because the tarot can be read in two ways, upright and reversed, to provide different meanings and translations. So, if a devil card is pulled in a reading, but it comes from the deck upside down, aka reversed, instead of it representing temptation and seduction and manipulation and addiction, It might instead represent freedom, independence, and walking away from unhealthy bonds. So I think it is important to note that in Twin Peaks, just like in the tarot, many things are mirrors and reversals and upside-down interpretations of what we really see. Even moments before Mike just told us, he means it like it is, like it sounds. Some things are direct, and some are not. And so here we have our devil, our Pan, the man in the red suit, as the devil is often portrayed in modern tropes and images. And now we see the full scope of the space. The floor is a zigzag chevron pattern, perhaps mountains and valleys reminiscent of Twin Peaks, perhaps the up and down of the AC/DC electrical current, perhaps just a floor. 3 chairs occupy the space, almost like a living room of a TV sitcom. Next to Dale Cooper is a small end table with a small table lamp depicting the planet Saturn. The Tarot Handbook reminds us, quote, Saturn, the double-ringed planet, rules the sign of Capricorn, the goat. The rings of Saturn are seen at the top of the Thoth Tarot card, as the planet Saturn is most associated with balance, discipline, and doing things step by step. Capricorn is the astrological sign of the goat, known for tenacity, productivity, and achievement. It is in our capacity to follow our bliss, or what has resonance for us, that we can execute the discipline to bring into form our creative visions with mirth and tangible results. End quote. Behind the 2 central chairs is a statue of Venus de Medici. The famous statue modeled after the Greek goddess Aphrodite and her Roman counterpart Venus, another example of the desires of love and lust we so often become shackled to. The man from another place, our resident Pan figure and tempter, rubs his hands together, and we hear again the humming of the 432 megahertz singing bowl as he prepares his offer. Cooper looks on, then turns his gaze to Laura, who touches the side of her nose. A shadow moves across the red curtains, which the script notes is the shadow of a bird. The man from another place is happy, excited, and full of joy. He has good news. This is exactly how Pan would behave, the joyous reveler of the Middle Ages, bringing good news. What's the good news? That gum you like is going to come back in style. Cooper does not understand. The log lady warned us. Sometimes ideas, like men, jump up and say hello. They introduce themselves, these ideas, with words. Are they words? These ideas speak so strangely. The man from another place says, she's my cousin, referring to the Laura Palmer look-alike sitting next to him. But doesn't she look almost exactly like Laura Palmer? So isn't Laura Palmer dead? But this person sure looks like her. Cooper speaks for the first time, not in reverse, but in normal speech. But it is Laura Palmer. Are you Laura Palmer? Laura responds that she feels like she knows her, but sometimes my arms bend back. Deeper mysteries for another time. She's filled with secrets. The man from another place continues, in one of the best moments in the first Red Room sequence. As he says, where we are from, the birds sing a pretty song, and there is always music in the air. And as he says this, he looks up to the top of frame as if waiting for the director to cue the music, which the director does, and the jazzy, dreamy Red Room music begins to play after a few seconds. Lights flash, electricity. The man from another place begins dancing, echoing Leland's cries and dances from earlier that we must dance for Laura, as the one who looks like Laura slowly walks over to Cooper, seductively bends down in front of him, sweetly kisses him on the lips, and whispers something in his ear while blue light flashes on their faces. Cooper bolts from his sleep, a streak of his normally perfectly kept hair sticking straight upright. He immediately phones Harry Truman, telling him to meet for breakfast in the hotel lobby. Cooper knows who killed Laura Palmer. And it is now Cooper snapping his fingers to the jazzy beat of the music, which has spilled out from his dream into the clean and reasonably priced room 315 of the Great Northern Hotel.
Where we're from, the birds sing a freshly song. And there's always music in the air.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Falling, Floating, Dreaming, the Magic of Twin Peaks. Zen, or the skill to catch a killer, brings Twin Peaks to some new and truly strange and dreamy places, and really forever earned its place in the hearts and minds of audiences, fans, and the national zeitgeist forever. With deep spiritual themes, connections to ancient mythology, history, and in my humble opinion, in my humble view, to the tarot, the third episode of Twin Peaks not only deepens the mystery and the plot of the show, but allows David Lynch to begin painting with a broader and more abstract canvas. My name is Justin Carey, and you can find me on Instagram or at my website, justinrcarey.com. I would love to hear your thoughts about Twin Peaks, the tarot, and everything in between, so feel free to send in a message to the podcast, leave me a comment on Instagram, or reach out in whatever way works for you. Don't forget to subscribe to Screen to get all the latest episodes of Falling, Floating, Dreaming as we make our way through the magic of Twin Peaks. And thank you so much for listening and hanging out with me inside this strange dream for a little while. I will see you on the next episode. Let's rock!